Hi everybody, today is a wonderful day in Vienna, Austria. A warm welcome to you all to our second MOOC for 2019. Today we have a great topic to share with you, which is how to create custom reports in Tosca, in particular how to use the list and label tool. Before we begin, I would like to introduce you to today's hosts for this session. My name is Simona Domazatowska and I'm a training consultant at Tricentis. Joining me today is Roland Pichler, Senior Consultant at Tricentis. Roland, thank you for joining us.
Thank you as well. Also, a warm welcome from my side.
Great. Before we dive deep into the session, I would like to go over some general housekeeping rules. You may have heard these many times before. However, as we always have newcomers to our MOOCs, please allow me to run through them once more. All participants will be muted during this session. As there are hundreds of you currently attending, it would obviously be quite distracting if everyone were talking, and that would make the session hard to follow. Even though you're all muted, we do encourage you to ask questions during this session. Please use the Q&A box for this. The Q&A session will take place at the end. We will try to answer as many questions as possible during the session, but please be aware that only questions related to the current topics will be covered. Please also keep in mind that given the number of attendees, we may not be able to answer all of your questions during the session. Lastly, let me state that this session will be recorded and will be shared on our website later this week. So that's enough from me, I think. Now I will hand you over to Roland, who will begin with a discussion on how to create custom reports on Tosca.
Thank you, Simona. So we're jumping right into the topic. And basically what I would like to share today with you is an overview of our reporting capabilities, including print view, Tricentis Analytics, and the list and labels reporting. Especially I would like to focus on list and labels reporting in this session and give you an introduction of the reporting section and how to understand how it works, and also different functionalities within the report designer. And of course, I will also show to you how you can adapt your custom reports or the standard reports according to your needs. So jumping right into the topic, we'll start with print view. The print view can be found within Tosca in the top right side of your details view, which is the right view in your Tosca, and is marked by the small print icon in the top right corner. If you hit that one, it will immediately print whatever you have visible on the current page. So you can choose which print output format you want to have. For example, I took a PDF in this case, and it will print that into a PDF format. You see a small example on the right side. It's a pretty quick print. It is not meant for any complex stuff, just to get a quick overview. A more comprehensive reporting solution is Tricentis Analytics, which is our current state-of-the-art dashboard and comes with two flavors, one for the execution side and one for the requirement side, and includes all the KPIs necessary for a management reporting. Since this MOOC is not in focus of analytics, we are going to jump right into list and labels reporting. So what is list and labels reporting? Basically, pretty sure you have already seen our standard reports either on the support side or within your own repository. They are coming with the standard subset. If you check that one while creating a new workspace, and Tricentis is delivering 9 standard subsets out of the box currently, which you can see in the small box in the middle of the screen. They are for execution lists, for requirement sets, for requirements, and for test cases. In order to find out what these are doing, we need to get a deeper understanding of TQL. As you can see, the reports are using TQL to fetch data, and then in the report designer, you can take that data and put it wherever you like to create a fancy report. We'll come to that later. As you can also see, the reports are specific on certain objects within Tosca. So if a report is made for the execution list area, it can only be printed on the execution list section. This is an example of one of our standard reports we do have in place, which we're also going to modify today. You can see it consists of a pie chart, a table, a list, which is probably also a table. We're gonna find out. Let's now jump directly into Tosca and see how the reporting section looks like within Tosca. Within Tosca, I've prepared one workspace having the standard subset included, which I'll open right now. If you're opening a new workspace, then you do not immediately have the reporting section added to your project. You can add that either by going through the home ribbon to the sections and going to the reporting, or if you show the project root element and find the reporting area here. It is directly below the project root. As you can see, we do have a couple of standard reports coming with Tosca in the standard subset. And here you can also see the different objects they are able to print on. You see the column object type, which defines on which object the report is possible to print on. For execution lists and for test cases, it is fairly simple because there is just one item you essentially want to have a report on. For the requirement sets and requirements, it is a little bit different since you can also have a report on a certain requirement. Let's take, for example, the requirement report we have here. We have 3 reports defined on the requirement set. So if I jump to a requirement set, let me just quickly create one. If you jump to requirement set, you see you have 3 reports available. These are the reports specified in the bottom here. You have 1 report for requirement, because that is a different object, and it's also possible to have a report on this one. You will see if I print the report here, I only have 1 report available because that is designed for that object. Coming back to the reporting, we're going to focus on one specific report today, and that is one of the easier to understand reports. It is the execution entries with actual log. In order to have it easy to see what I'm going to explain to you, I will just create a new box on the bottom here. When you open that report, you can see various things. What you see here is the so-called TQL query language. I assume you're all familiar with TQL query. If not, there has already been a MOOC recorded previously which explains TQL in its details. Nonetheless, I would still like to go over some examples and explain what objects are going to be delivered to the report designer in order to use them. You can also add a column called TQL query to show the full query of your report. So let's see how it looks like in the execution list. For that, I've prepared already an example here in the JSON execution list. And as you can see, I do have some test cases who are passed, some test cases who don't have a result, some test cases who are failed, and let me also include 2 test cases I set to no result so we can see them in the report. To find out which object is actually transferring which data to which so-called dataset definition, we're gonna have to read TQL a little bit. For that purpose, let me simply open the TQL search and show to you how the objects are looking like, what we are transferring to the report designer. Basically, we start at the object execution list. After that, we are selecting the object itself. This is always the first step. So we can either type it in, or we just take the pre-filled TQL query and put it into the TQL search. As you can see, this is the TQL search we are currently on. To figure out which objects are below that, we just need to take the next level and take the query from there. In this case, it's subparts execution entries. This will find us all execution entries below this very execution list. As you can see, we are finding all the execution entries with their status. What you can also see in the columns is that we are delivering only certain data sets to the report designer. In this case, for example, for the execution list, we just hand over the name property. For the execution entries, we hand over the actual results and the name, and for all the others, we also hand over different stuff. If you want to go to the logs, simply append the whole query to your existing TQL query. And you will find all the relevant execution logs. What you can also see in comparison to the execution entries is that we have a different amount of execution logs. We have 12 execution entries, but only 10 execution logs. That will have a difference in the viewing of the report once you print them. So let's now see how this very report is looking like and what we probably can get from these objects. So I will print an example report. Standard is PDF, and I'll just call it MOOC_1. That report has a cover page. In the cover page, you can see what type of report it is. You have a nice logo on the top right. You have an image in the left side. You have a couple of texts here. You see when it's created on, by whom, what the Tosca version is. And if you go further, you see different data. You see the summary of all the test cases passed, no results, and failed. You see a pie chart representing the values you've seen above. You see an execution summary chart of all your execution lists. Since I've printed the report only on one execution list, only one entry is shown here. Then you see another pie chart, another table, and tables with the details. As said before, you will see a difference if there is a log or not. For example, here we do have a log. And on the string test case, and on the other hand, on the multiple values test case, you can see we don't have a log here. Same goes for all the others, of course. And here's the second test case, which doesn't have a log yet. Let me close that again. Within the report designer, you can modify and use all the data you're feeding to the report. And as said, each and every query here, each and every data set definition which you're having here is feeding the data with one type of object. You can see the object type here in the object type tab or column. So for each dataset definition, you have one set of data you are delivering to the to the report designer. If you're not sure which object you're actually delivering, then you can always search with the global subpart search to get all the object types of all the different objects you're having. For example, we can see the execution list is the object we are searching on. The execution entries are the to be executed test cases in the green section. the execution entry folder is a folder, these two folders, above the test cases. And because we do have a single arrow parent folder, it is only the single folder above the test cases. That's what you can also see in the report itself. The actual log, what you see here, is the actual log below the test cases themselves. We do also have a direct reference to the test case area, which is the blue area. So what you can also have in the report designer is a jump from one section in Tosca to another section. It's basically the same as if you are on an object and press right click jump to test case. Then you will also jump to the test case. So you will also get these test cases with their property name available in the report designer. And what you also have is the execution log. The execution log is the actual log visible here on top below the execution list. And we usually do have one execution log, which you can also find in the query. This is the actual log of the execution list, and as long as you don't create an archive, you won't have a second one. So everything is going to be updated within this one actual log. Explain that, we are now going into the report designer, and I'll show you how the data you fed the report with is actually used within report designer. To go into the report designer, you simply select the report and go right click design report. Just to mention, if you want to create a new report from scratch, it is always suggested to copy an existing report because you're most likely going to reuse the existing structure and TQL queries and probably also parts of the report designer part. So it's way easier to copy and modify a report than create a report from scratch. So let's jump into the designer. Within the report designer, which is now opened, you probably have seen that for the first time. Probably you're also experts on it, depending on if you have had the joy to customize a report yet. This is the report designer, and it consists of a couple of windows, menu entry, and so on. And I will guide you now through the different areas of that report designer and explain them to you one by one. First of all, on top we do have the menu. As usual, we have a start menu where just the common stuff is available. Then we do have an insert. This is more interesting because you can insert a text, for example, or a picture on the page, or you can also have a report container. The report container is especially interesting since whenever you have a specific chart or take structured data from Tosca, you need to put that within a report container element. You will also see that we have used a report container in this report. You can also have different other charts like cross tabs and so on and so forth. The project tab is responsible for the layout, structure, and other things. For example, you can define if you want to have a landscape report here, since that would not look very pretty if I print it like that. Let me just simply change it back to portrait. You can also have the layers here on object list and so on and so forth. On the right side, you see the available objects we have for the reports. These are all the values we have fed the report with using TQL query. And you also have a couple of project variables and other list and labels variables, such as the Tosca images for pass and fail and so on. You can also define user variables and some variables. Here on the left side, you have the part where most of the work will be done. First of all, let me go quickly over the properties on the bottom here, and therefore I will just select the so-called report container. What you see on the right side here in the middle, this is the general overview of how your report may look like. Since there is no real data fed to the report, which is done on demand. This is just a preview and should also only give you an indication how it looks like. I've selected the reporting container now, and on the bottom left side you see, for example, all the properties of the reporting container. If I choose any other object in here, then I have the properties of the other object. For example, I do have the positioning here, which is some strange numbers. I could, just as a showcase, change one of these numbers, and you will see it has an immediately effect on the object overview in the middle, in the preview. So let's change this to 200. As you can see, everything just got bigger and everything just got adjusted to the new size you have given it. Basically, in the properties, you can define how your objects in general do look like. Let me change that back because the original format fits the report better than the new one. Here on the left side, you do have a couple of objects. For example, you do have what we have seen in the report itself. We do have a table. This looks like a table, but actually is a so-called cross table, which is a little bit more complex table. Then we have a pie chart. We have another cross table. We have another table in the bottom here. What you also can see is whenever you click on something on the left side, it will highlight it in the preview. Then we have another chart and another table and some other tables. So let's go briefly over those objects. In order to show you the example directly in the report, let me open the report in parallel. As you can see within the report designer, we do have a preview here which reflects on to the report itself. So first of all, we do have an execution summary. The execution summary is what has been defined in the report designer on this level. So this is the execution summary, and as you can also see, it is taking its values from the entry all entries. The second thing is a chart. The chart is also taking its values from the all entries and reflects that pie chart down here. If we go further on with the crosstab, you can see the same crosstab is also visible within the report itself. Then you have another table and so on and so forth. You will find all the objects in here. And what you also can see is for an execution list, we do have a pie chart, we do have the status of this execution list, and we do have the status of each and every entry. These are reflected down here, as you can see in the preview. What comes now is, I would like to introduce you a little bit deeper into the objects themselves. So let's say, for example, if we have a cross table, that actually looks like a table, but it is not a table. It is a so-called cross table, as you can see here in the access definition, and it contains a lot of data. What you'll need to know in this case is this table takes its values from the all entries actual result, and we can find that also within Tosca. So basically we are just taking the actual result property of all entries. So let's see where that is. If we go back from out of the report designer, you can see that we have all entries here, and we are feeding the property actual result to the dataset definition all entries. By doing that, it is available within report designer. By the way, the actual result, if we want to see what it is in TQL query, you can show that here. So basically it is passed, failed, no result. Going back to the report designer, let's go back to our tab. There is a couple of more objects defined here. So basically, when you compare that to the actual report, we do have the test cases total. This is hard-coded text. You can see it in the report here. Then you have a number. This is a calculation which sums up the number of objects in total within the report, within Tosca, which have been executed. And then you have a hard-coded 100%. As you can see here, this is test cases total. This is the number which has been there in total and the 100%. And then we have three different results: passed, no results, failed. And this is where the cross tab comes in game. So depending on what the actual result is, it will create one or more rows depending on the different possible entries. If you, for example, only have passed and failed test cases, the row no results will not be shown here. If you're having just one of them, you will just have one in the report. The amount in the middle here is the total count of the actual result in comparison to all the test cases you have executed within that execution list. And in the back here, you have a calculation which gives you the percentage based on 100% on how many test cases are in that status in comparison to the total test case count. So as you can see, this is not a simple table. This is a little bit more advanced table, which is quite handy if you're having different study, which you have to put into the report. On the other hand, what you have also seen is that we do have one cover page here on top who looks slightly different than, let me just zoom out a little, which looks slightly different than all the other pages here. So for example, we do not have a logo here. We do have a different text here. We do have this green line here, and the real report starts at the second page. And we also do not have this bottom line here. So how is this playing together? At this point, I would like to introduce you to the layers who are present within the report designer. As you might have seen already, the report container and also this text on the bottom here has a slightly bluish background color, which is not present within the report itself. This is just an indication on which layer that might be on. And therefore, I would like to introduce you to the layers concept. In this report, we have 5 layers. One is the base layer, containing all the default stuff. One is the first page layer, which is the front page, the cover page. Then we do have 2 execution summary objects, where you can see here the one execution summary and here second execution summary. And we do have the following pages containing the report container and the name of the report. The base layer consists of all the stuff which is general for each and every row. So first of all, I would like to show you how you can modify different layers and why that is important. For that purpose, let me go to the following pages and also the base page layer. You can modify the layers by double-clicking on them or going into more detail, where you can see which layer is on which page. For example, base layer has nothing defined and therefore is on every page. The first page is defined through page 1. Following pages is everything except page 1, and execution summary is on page 2, and execution summary 2 is on page 3. So what happens if we do have objects which need to be on a different layer? For example, I do want, and that is a very common case, to change the logo from Tricentis to something else, probably your company. If you want to do that, you have 2 possibilities. One of possibility is you have your logo at hand and you just want to replace the logo of the within the existing report. For doing that, just simply double click it. This is an image. You see here the picture should be embedded in the project file. Just search for your image and open it. It will then change automatically to the new image you have. This image is now populated, as you can see, with the gray background on the base layer, and therefore means it should be visible on every page. Well, let's see. For that, we are just going to create the report again. And I call it MOOC_2. And what you can see is that we do have the logo on each and every page now. So this is one way of adding your logo to an existing report. Another way is to add the logo through the insert on top here. So therefore, I want to have a new logo on the first page, which is way bigger than the others. For that purpose, I'm just taking the same logo. So just draw a rectangle with the picture, say you want to have it from a file. For the sake of this demo, I will just take the same logo again and make it bigger. So this is my bigger logo. I'll just put it down here. So this should just be on the first page. So I've put it on the first page layer. Let me just save and close that and show you how it looks like. Therefore, I'm creating another report. And as you can see, I currently have both the images available here. The big fat Tricentis Academy logo, which is only on the cover page because I assigned it to the layout first page, and the small Academy logo, which I do have on each and every page. So the question now is, I do not want to have that logo on the first page. How can I have it on all the other pages but the first page? This is easily done by just going to the base layer where we do have our icon currently on. For every object, you can define on which layer it should be. It currently is on the base layer, meaning it is populated on each and every page. And if you want to have it, for example, just in the following pages, which is every page except the first page, you can just simply right-click it and say Assign to Layer, and then choose the correct layer. You will see it disappearing in the base layer because it's not available there anymore. It is now in the following pages. Let me show you how this looks like. I just print the report again. And as you can see, it disappeared from the first page since it is only assigned to the following pages layer now. So this is how you can easily change the Tricentis logo to any logo you would like. As you can see also, or as you probably already have seen, the green icon here, the green picture icon here, is in the whole page, and if you want to change that, you can just change it in the same way as you did it for the Tricentis logo. All right. Coming back to that, I would like to go now a little bit deeper within the report designer and show you a couple of more features for your understanding and how to read the data within the report designer. For that example, I would like to go to the following pages layer where I'm already on and see what we have in there. As said, we have a cross tab, we have a chart, we have another cross tab, then we have a table, and then we have another table. This is a simple table populating some values. This table can be found in the report below the execution lists and is reflecting this report here. You will most likely have to change tables whenever you're going to create a new report or modifying an existing report. So this will be one of your most common cases. So let me show you how you can read the data for tables and how you modify them accordingly. When you open one of these tables, you're automatically getting this pop-up here, which is reflecting all the data you have available within the report. As you can see, we do have something like a header line and a footer line and a group header and group footer if that is necessary. And we also do have a data line. The data line will be printed once for each occurrence of the object. As you can see, we're currently fetching the data from the execution logs table, which is the dataset definition you can find on the bottom here. So this is the actual log of our execution list containing all the data. Let me go back to the report designer. For each and every line definition, one line definition represents one line printed within the report. You're having certain objects within that line. As you can see, the table is currently highlighted here, and you have a small dotted line here to the left. This is where the table starts. In the beginning, we do have an empty space which is 12 millimeters wide. And on the right side here, you can also see that it has some properties set. For example, the frame is without lines and stuff like that. So therefore, you don't see lines here. And also some other properties like the background and many other things can be set here for and so on and so forth. This one is an empty text. The next thing is a so-called RTF object, which is a special text format. And what you have here is the sum up sign, which is reflected within the report. So as you can see in the report itself, you do have the sum up image here. Then we have a hard-coded text, test cases total. And what we do have here is the first occurrence of a dynamic value. And this one is fetching the data from the dataset definition execution logs and is taking the properties of number of test cases. You can find these values here in the fields field, where you can see execution logs, and here we have all available properties of that execution logs object. We do have, for example, the name, number of test cases, passed, failed, and so on. As you can see within the line definitions, this has been used over and over here. We do have, let me just make this a little bit bigger. We do have number of test cases passed, number of test cases failed, and number of test cases not executed. These are used to fill in the specific values you see here, the 12, 6, 2, 4. And then we have a hard-coded 100, because it is always 100% of test cases who have been executed in total. So this can be hard-coded. And in order to have it in the format of percentage, the format has been set to a percentage format. So you can and have to define everything you want to publish in the report within the report designer. What you can also see is that the alignment, for example, here is centered. Then you have a second line definition. The second line definition indicates that there is a new line, which is the second line here, and the values of these lines are also an empty space with a specific width. Then you have an image, which is the Tosca image result passed. That one is an image which is available within the report designer and can be found under variables, Tosca, images, result, where we offer passed and failed as default. So we also provide some Tosca standard images to be available within the report designer. Then we have the test cases passed, the dynamic string for number of test cases, and we do have a calculation with a condition. This condition does nothing else than taking all the test cases of number of passed and calculating the percentage amount of how many test cases are passed and failed. As you can see, this is the percentage of 50% which have been passed. There is a percentage of 16.6% rounded up of test cases which have been failed, and also some with no result. The line definition 3 is similar to line definition 2. The only difference is, of course, that it reflects the failed parts and also has the result for the image for failed, and also the number of test cases failed, and so on. And the line definition 4 does not have an icon, since there is no icon available for no result. So now that you've understood how a table works, let us modify a table. For example, I do really want to have the line test cases passed viewed in a different color. Doing that, I can go into my line definition and I can select, I'm not selecting the empty one because this I don't want to color, but I do want to select the image until the 100%, for example. Oh, I said doing the past. So I'm selecting the past parts. What you can see on the right side now is that these values are having some stars and some are in the same name. This happens because the properties of all these values are different for each of these values, but some are the same. For example, the background transparent. And we are going to change that now, for example, to button block. Since this is at the past, I would like to have a color, for example, past is always green, therefore I take a color and I prefer long green in that case. So I just choose the color long green. It will automatically be reflected within your layout designer, within your layout preview to see what you have done. Because I want to have a little bit more visible within the report, I just do the same for the failed. So simply select them, change the background to whatever you like, and in this case I'm taking some form of red. Let's take red. As you can see, everything will be red here. No result can stay white, but I do want to have the test case count total in a different color. And therefore, I, for example, take the color light gray. So let me take a little bit gray, so it's viewed in a little bit gray here. Let's see how this looks like in our report. We're going back, print the report. Let's call it MOOC_5. And as you can see, further down in the report designer, we do have pretty colors now. I took a little bit too red for the red part, so maybe I need to change that one. And as you can see as well is that the sum icon has been added as an icon and not as a text sign. This is because there is no symbol of sum. It was an icon which was added through the RTF. But this is how easy you can change colors. Going back to the report designer, you probably also want to do something else. First, let's change the red to a more readable red. So let's take, for example, I take a light one, so the X is visible, just for the sake of divisions. And what I also want to have is, for example, a header row. You can have a header row if you're just going to the header line, and when you're clicking that, you're automatically, because you don't have a header row yet, are getting a suggestion what to use as a header row. You're getting either empty line definition, or you can have one of the other line definitions from the data line as an example for your header line. Because I'm lazy and I do not want to do all the structuring again, I just take line definition 1. So line definition 1, of course, also comes with colors. Let me get rid of that. And it takes over automatically everything in terms of naming from that line definition. So here we can see the first one is the empty space. The second one is the image, which has not been taken over. So I want to change that. If you want to write text within one of these objects, it has to be between double quotes. So in this case, I just write, for example, image. Then you have the test cases total. I'll just simply switch that to test cases so it doesn't match with the other name. Number of test cases is a little bit too long for my feeling, so I just use the number icon, test cases. And this is not 100, but this is actually how many percent we do have for this. So as you can see, it is automatically changed in the preview, and once we print that, you will see the outcome. So let me print it again. Within the report now, you see we do have a header row created and defined for our table. All right, let's go back. What you might have also seen is that in the report designer, we just have one object for the execution list. We just have one object for the entry, and we have one object for the folder, the test cases, and the actual log. And as you can see here in the preview, let me simply deselect the charts here so we have it visible in a more in a better way. We do have the execution list here on top. We do have the all entries here on bottom. In between, we do have the execution logs and the chart. They are just published once. As you can see within the report, they are just here once. But for each and every execution entry, we do have one entry in our report having all the parameters relevant for this one execution entry. As you can see within the table structure here, it starts with the execution list. Below that, we do have the all entries. Below that, we do have the execution entry folder. We do even have the test case, which is apparently not used here, but can be used if necessary. And we do have the actual result, providing the start date, the start time, the user, and the description of the run. The entry and all its child elements are populated within the report many times because they are available within Tosca more than once. So how does this work? Let me give you a little bit broader example. If I just print the report not only on one execution list, but on a folder above. So we are having 3 execution lists now. We are having the execution list JSON example, web service example, and XML example. Don't worry about the results here. It doesn't matter if they have a status or not for our case. So let me just print that one. Call it MOOC 6, 7. What you can see in the report now is we still have the cover page. Then we have the summary, which is the first chart within our report designer. Then a pie chart. Then we do have an execution summary consisting of more than 1 execution list now and featuring all the values of it. By the way, this is also a cross table, which is dynamically created depending on the data you fed it with. And we do have a detail for each and every execution list. First is the JSON example, where you have the pie chart and the overview for the JSON example, and the results and status for all your execution entries. And what comes next is, as we have more pages than 5 now, the details of the next execution list and the details of the next execution list. So with all its entries. So what does that mean? Because we have used a structured view here, having execution lists, all entries, and actual log, one below each other, it will also be represented in the report designer in the same way, meaning that you are having, or that you can have, let's say it like that, a structured view within your report designer. And for every occurrence of that object within its parent object, there will be one entry in your report saying if your execution lists consists of 12 execution entries, for each and every execution list, you will have all the execution entries printed in your report. And for each execution entry, you will have all its sub-properties, which are a one-to-one connection. For example, one test case, in this case, has one actual log. And they will be printed once per execution entry. And therefore, you can see in the report, for each and every execution entry is one result created. All right, let me show you one more thing, which is actually a dependency. So let's say you do have these results printed now within your report. What you can do and what you can't do is you cannot just shorten or modify the structure of one execution entry, since they are maintained on a central at a central point. If you change the execution entry in its own, then it will change for each and every population of that execution entry. So let me show you what I mean. Therefore, we are taking the table all entries, which is responsible for the execution entry name, and we will just take the name of it and shorten it down to, let's say, not 151, but for example 90. Obviously, this one will be shorter now. You can also see that in the preview. And let's see how it looks like in the report itself now. If I print the same report, you will see that these values have been taken over within the report now, and for each and every execution entry, the name will be shortened, because I defined it to be like that for each execution entry. So on this level, you cannot modify just one occurrence of an execution entry. Either you do it for all or for none. So since the time is running short, this is all for today. There are way more complex structures like different charts or other special things you can do with the report designer, which I'm not going into detail now. If you're having questions regarding that, feel free to contact our support team. So this is it for my presentation so far.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Roland. Thank you for this very thorough presentation of how to create reports in Tosca. We'll now take some time to answer some of the great questions we've received so far throughout the session. So a very great question here. Someone has asked, can I include a parent folder structure within my report?
Thank you for the question. Yes, you can, and this is actually quite simple also. So I assume you mean that, for example, for this folder or for this execution list, you also want to have the objects of the parent folders, for example, JSON, tbox xengines, whatsoever, within your report. In order to do that, you need to modify the report a little bit. Let me create a backup of my report in that case. So, in order to do that, you should not start at the execution list itself, but you should start at a higher level point to be able to include all the other objects within your report as well. Therefore, you need to add a new dataset definition, which you can do by creating a new dataset definition. And let me just move that around a little bit. So this is our new execution list here, and we need to modify the existing one a little bit. So we are not starting on the execution list here, we are starting on a TC folder. For this example, we also take a second level into consideration. Therefore, we say TC folder 2, which is a sub-object. And this is a TC folder. For your information, a TC folder is any folder above the objects within the relevant objects within Tosca Commander. So, for example, the objects above an execution list, the objects above a test case, they are all called TC folder, Tosca Commander folder. So what do we have here now? For example, you want to start your test cases up here, but you want to also your report up here, but you also want to have the folder structure of, let's say, tbox xengines and JSON Web Service XML included. Doing that, you need to start from one of these folders. Of course, this is also a folder here. And you need to change your source of the report. In order to do that, just simply take one object you want to print the report on and drag and drop it onto the report itself. It will then say on what object it is able to print the report on. Here you can see it is possible to print the report on a folder, on the Tosca Commander folder with a possible content of execution lists and folders. That meaning this report is not printable anymore on the execution list, but on any folder above. And because we do have a second folder in here, which we also want to show in the report, I can't execute it from any folder, but I have to define a specific folder. And of course, my execution list is below my folder. If you create a new object, you're automatically getting only the name column checked. So please take that into consideration when you're providing your report with data. Having that structure, you should be able to run that report from that very folder, because you have this folder is the folder self, and the TC folder 2 is the subfolder, and below that you have the execution list. So let's see if that works. Of course, you're getting the same report. If you want to use that data now within your report designer, I will just mess up the structure a little bit in order to show you what I mean. You can create, or you can use this data, for example, in a new table. And what you have as choice now is you can take the folder or TC folder 2, and they come with a structure, and it's the same structure as you've defined in your dataset definitions. So let me just take, for this example, the TC folder 2 below TC folder in order to show how it looks like. I've created a new table here, which is currently having nothing in it, but let me just add the field of TC folder, and I want to have the folder name. You will automatically get a header line and a footer line, which in our case we don't need, so I just delete them. And I'll do the same for the table 2. So I'll take the name as well. We're getting a header line and the footer line. And what you can also do, what I can also show you at the same time, is you can not only take the values from the object you are on, you can also display the name of a parent object. In this case, I can jump to the parent object of folder 2, which is TC folder, and also publish the name there. You will see it is a parent surrogate, and you will have it here to the right now. So if I print that report again, it will show me something different, meaning it will show me the tbox X engines is the folder I've printed the report from, and then I have the folder JSON, where the parent folder is tbox X engines, and then I have XML and web service, where the parent folder is tbox X engines as well. So you can either use it in a structured view, having one object after the other, or you're saying you want to refer to the parent object of a current object. Both functionalities are used within the standard reports. So if you want to learn reporting, just take a look at all the reports you're having to learn about the different functionalities you can use within Report Designer. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, great. So we have another question here. Someone has asked, I want to include screenshots made during execution in my report. Is that possible?
That's a good question, and also a question I'm hearing very often. And therefore, we have created a new standard report recently taking care of that, which can be found within the standard report samples as well. It is the report called Execution Entries with Detailed Logs. This is a report taking care of all the objects within your execution log, so to say execution tested value logs and tested value sublogs, and so on and so forth. And it also includes screenshots, which you can freely choose where you populate them. We've also created a knowledge base article for that report, so if you don't have that report yet, you do not need to import the whole standard subset. You can also just go to this knowledge base article and download the latest report here. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and we have one final question. When printing a report, my data is not shown. Why is that the case?
That's also a good question I'm hearing a lot. That happens most likely because you are using old standard reports and you are located in a different time zone. Within the Tosca reports, it is very important if you are for certain reports, for example, the new report for detailed logs and the test case overview, in which time zone you are. There are two time zones, and I'll like to explain that regarding the knowledge base article. Within there's two time zones you can be in. It's either metric, which is using the millimeters format, or it's US, which is using the inches format. They have, for some reports, a calculation factor between them, and that means your data is not disappearing, it's just way too far to the right. If you're changing the measurement system, for example, from US to metric, because that's where all reports initially have been created on, you might be able to solve your problem. On the other hand, the latest reports do already cover that functionality, so I would strongly recommend you to import the latest standard subset and get the reports from there in order to have the latest updates on those reports and also the latest design for them. Any further questions?
Okay, I think that's about all the questions we have time for. Apologies if we didn't get around to your question in this round. Very quickly though, before we leave you, I would like to quickly remind you of our upcoming MOOC, which will cover, the Tricentis Cloud Repository, what it is, and its new features available. This will take place on the 27th of February, so in about 3 weeks, and it will be broadcasted in 2 time sessions, between 10 and 11 a.m. and between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. And these are Central European times. As always, you can register on our website and follow the links to registration there. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact our support team at support@tricentis.com. If you have any training related questions, then we're happy to hear from you, and you can contact us on academy@tricentis.com. Additionally, we have loads of online resources available, such as Knowledge Base, which is a great place to gather more knowledge and information or look at something in more detail. We have also just released our Tosca Best Practices Manual, which you can access via Knowledge Base. If you enjoyed this session and would like further insight into any previous topics covered, you can go to our website and find all previous MOOC recordings there. Additionally, if you would like to view the session again, we will upload it within this week or in the next few days, and you can watch it once again online on demand. We are also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We are especially very present on YouTube, and you can find us on the Tricentis Academy channel. There are a series of Tosca in a heartbeat videos, short videos of about 2 to 3 minutes each, where we quickly cover a certain functionality of Tosca. So they're very useful. Make sure to check them out. Finally, thank you very much once again for joining us. Thank you to Roland for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks very much.